You've seen the work we put in, day in and day out, challenging myths, debunking old wives' tales, and exposing poor breeding practices. Ugh. We spent years researching, studying, and applying real-world experiences to perfect the art of science of breeding. Why? Because you deserve the best, most accurate information out there. But to keep this mission alive and growing, we need your support. If you found value in the Bred to Perfection live show, take a moment, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and share our content. It may seem small, but every like, every subscriber, and every share helps us reach more breeders who need to hear the truth, who want to learn what it really takes to create, maintain, and improve high-quality strains. This isn't just a YouTube channel, it's a movement, and you're a vital part of it. If you believe in what we're doing, if you want to help others discover the power of true breeding, help push this channel to the top. Like, subscribe, and share. Together, we make a difference. Thank you for standing with us. Now, let's get to work. Entertaining, informative, and educational. Inspiring content that makes a difference.
This is the Maximus Troy Publications Broadcasting Network.
Join the Academy. Kitty! Give me help us! This show is brought to you by the Breeders Academy, where we will help you to increase your knowledge of breeding, advance your skills as a breeder, and help you to improve the quality and performance of your fowl.
As a member, I'll provide you a roadmap that you will need to create a true family or strain. Starting with a cock from one breeder and a hen from another breeder, no problem. We can help you to turn your flock of hybrid crosses or mongrels into a pure family or strain, and show you how to continually improve that strain each generation. We'll start by showing you how to select your seed fowl and how to turn that seed fowl into a high-quality foundation strain. Our proven breeding programs and specialty courses are designed to take you step by step through the breeding process. And best of all, I'll be there to help you every step of the way.
We urge you to check it out. You have nothing to lose, and you can cancel at any time. You also have a 30-day money-back guarantee. Simply go to www.breedersacademy.com to sign up.
The Breeders Academy will not only change the way you think about breeding, but improve the way you breed your fowl.
never been a quitter. Why, I've never known when to quit. Just ask my 4th grade teacher.
He never knew when to quit. Oh.
Okay, welcome to another episode of Bred to Perfection. I'm Kenny Troiano, founder of the Breeders Academy, and I'm here with my wife, Nancy. I always surprise you with those shorts, don't I? Because you crack it up. I know I got a good one when she's in there laughing her ass off, you know.
Yeah, I'm in the green room waiting to go on, and I'm sitting there laughing. Yeah, because I don't hear what he's going to put on before he puts it on. The first time I hear it is when you guys hear it. So... Yeah.
Sometimes I find some good ones.
You do.
So what's going on?
Hey, it's another sunny, sultry day in sunny California.
If one more person tells me I live in paradise, I'm going to hit them over the head with a shovel. I don't know. Was it? It's in the hundreds today, right? It's got to be.
It was. Yeah.
What does that mean? For a minute?
Warm. Well, it was when I was at the grocery store. I don't know about now.
Well, that was this morning, so I know it's hotter than that now.
Yeah.
So I've got the air conditioner going. Hopefully you guys won't hear that. But last Tuesday, I had a good time. I was on Talking Chickens with Matt and Mike. We talked about the progressive white and leukosis. That progressive white's getting a lot of attention, getting a lot of people worked up. Well, I've said it over and over, and I'll say it again. Good. Hopefully it wakes them up. Hopefully it changes the way they do things. I'm not done. I'm on stage 2 of my process of teaching you guys progressive white. I've got a couple more to go. Just releasing them when I'm ready. But and then we talked about leukosis, which is similar to Merrick's. And yeah, that was good. A lot of fun.
Yeah.
I told him, I feel like the messenger of bad news, because the 2 topics they want me to cover were not fun topics for a lot of people, because a lot of people are dealing with them. But it was a good show.
It was so funny because I was supposed to be in the show with them, but we couldn't get my computer into whatever system that they were using. And I was not going to go in and sit next to Kenny during the show because I wanted him to concentrate on what he had to say and not being distracted by anything that I was doing, moving around or trying to fight for the mouse or anything like that. So I'm like, okay, I'll just stick to the chat room. And Mike and Matt were like, we need Nancy here because she asks us all the great questions. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because with progressive white, I don't know that much about leukosis, which is what they also discussed, but progressive white, I kind of know all the ins and outs of that one. So I don't really have any questions to ask about that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But I felt the same way. I like it when you're on the show because you do ask the questions I think the audience wants to know, things that I'm not thinking of at the time. I always say that it's like having the curse of knowledge. I kind of feel like whatever I'm teaching, you guys already know or have a good idea of what I'm talking about. So I don't feel like I'm losing you. But Nancy's there. If she thinks I'm losing you or I'm not covering it properly, she knows how to bring it back up again, so to make sure that we're covering it the way it needs to be covered. Because I just assume that I'm covering my bases. Working hard on the Breeders Academy. This matter of fact, the topic we're doing today is kind of a spur of the moment, last minute kind of thing, because I've been working so hard on the website, creating new pages and everything, that I didn't really take the time to figure out what we're going to teach for Friday, and the one that she's working on, or the one that I'm going to do eventually here pretty soon, is gotten so big. I'm not even sure we're going to get it in an hour, even an hour and a half. I'm not sure what I'm going to do about it, but it's a really good course. I've tried to teach it a number of times. I always said it's like a crash course for new people, a refresher course for my members, but really good information. Basically, it's going to cover the type of information you need to know to create a strain, which is kind of what we're talking about today too. But it's why people fail. It's the things they don't know that's hurting them. That if they understood how certain things work, they'd get a lot better results and they wouldn't have to guess and speculate. And You know, a lot of people think they have a handle on breeding. They really don't. They really don't. They're not even close to where they should be. A lot of the wives' tales, like, you know, my white-legged birds are better at this than my yellow-legged birds, but they all come from the same family. Well, that doesn't work like that. Bring in a new blood. We talk about that from time to time, thinking that they're refreshing them, that the Kelsos refresh the sweaters. I heard that just recently. It doesn't work like that. So I sat down, I wrote up all the kind of things that we need to talk about that you guys are missing, and put it all in one course. But you want to say something, Nancy? I see it on your face.
I did,
Okay.
but I forgot.
Okay.
No, speaking of which, the Breeders' Academy members know how to breed. They know what they need to do to get it done. And the courses that we have inside the Breeders' Academy show you step by step how to do that. So when you say you guys don't know how to breed or to move forward, my mind is going to our Breeders' Academy members. They know exactly what they're doing.
Well, most of the time here, I'm talking to potential members. People are just finding us for the first time. And the next two topics, you know, today's episode and the one we're talking about as well, I'm going after the ones who just found us, the new people. Because it seems like when I look at the chat and I listen to the shows when we're done, it seems like we're getting a lot of new people, which is really cool. We're starting to reach more and more people, and I'm seeing names and faces or names of people that I've never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's nice.
So I'm noticing that I need to cover certain topics to get them excited about breeding and show them there's another way to do it than maybe the way they're doing it right now. But I am working on the website quite a bit. We're creating a lot of new pages. You're not going to see them just yet, because what I do is I create the page, get it the way I want, and then you'll see it pop up on the screen. But I'm collecting a lot of material, a lot of information. And once I get those done, I'll pop them up. And I'm not sure if we're going to film it next Friday, but we're coming up on, what is today? This is episode 228 for the live show, which is a lot. Okay. But we're going on number 300 for the podcast. So we're hitting the big 300. And we want to kind of make us, I don't want to say what it is yet, because I think it's going to be really cool. And I want it to be a surprise. But it's going to be like a celebration, a 300 episode celebration. So I'll be spending most of next week working on that, getting everything together for that. And then I'll be back on the website. So what I'm saying is I'm working on the new pages I was telling people about. And you'll know when you see them. And as soon as I get them done, I will post them. Probably the first one that I'm going to post will be the nutrition page. I'm really, one of the things I wanted to do was present nutrition in a way that you can use it, because like I've said before, there's others teaching nutrition, which is fine. I just don't think they're teaching it in a way that you can use it. It leaves a lot of question, leaves a lot of people confused. It's like, okay, I see you're making it sound like the ration that I'm using is deficient. Okay, what do I do about it? Well, you need this and this and that. Okay, fine. How do I get that? How do I get that in the feed? Does that mean I have to get your feed? That kind of thing. So I really want to put together a website that's more practical and gives you the answers that you're looking for. And I've been putting together the material and the information. I told Nancy, this is going to be so great, because I'm loving the way this thing's going together. And I'm starting to collect labels. So I'll be comparing a lot of the different labels of the different manufacturers, the feed manufacturers, and we'll be talking about that. But it's coming out really nicely. Nancy's helping me with the banners. We're getting a lot of the videos together, and I'm going to get to a point, post it, and then I'm going to start working on the other pages, because I want to completely restructure the Masters Class video page and restructure the healthcare page. But I really want to get this nutrition page done, because I think it's needed. And then once I get those 3 pages done, I'll be improving the Start Here pages, so they're included when you first join. But and then we just have after that we just have a lot of masters class videos that a lot of topics that we're going to be covering after that. We'll be spending a lot of time doing brand new videos. Go ahead, Nance.
Yeah, so those of you that have recently departed from the Breeders' Academy, you might want to think about rejoining, because we're already, just in the past month, have gotten more information inside the Breeders' Academy.
Well, yeah, that's true, but we'll never stop.
We'll never stop, yeah.
So many things on my outline. I'm not on my outline, but my projects list that website is just going to keep getting bigger and better, and better and better, you know. Yeah. But I do want to welcome the new members. We've gotten quite a few new members recently. Like I said, start with the start here pages. There's no deadlines, no falling behind or trying to catch up. There's no testing whatsoever. Take your time. It's not a race, you know, it's a marathon, or it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And just always tell people, start with the start here pages. That's going to get you off on the right foot. But then after that, learn what you think you need to learn. And then after that, use it as a reference website. Okay. But first get to know the website. So, and if you want to learn, I mean, if you want to join the Breeders' Academy, just go to www.breedersacademy.com. Once you join, you're going to have instant access to the website. You're going to have access to the Masters class videos, members roundtables, which we're going to be starting up here again pretty soon. The members resources. You're going to get access to our signature breeding programs like the Founders Program, the Gene Shopping Program, and the Improvement Through Reduction Program. We've got a lot of great courses on breeding and selection, poultry genetics, and the laws of inheritance, breeding and creating a true strain, healthcare and disease prevention. And like I said, we're putting together a really cool nutrition and feeding page. You're going to have access to all our podcasts that we've done through the years and our live shows. And what's neat about the live shows on the membership is you're going to get what we call the members version that's going to be excluded of all this promo that you're seeing here. There's not going to be any ads, no promotions, just the topics. So it's nice and cleaned up for the members. And then you'll get your daily articles, and then there's a lot of great information from Brian Reeder, Tony Seville, Peter Brown, and Dr. Gallardo. And the good thing, too, is I do coaching calls. There's no limit to the coaching calls. We just have to schedule it. So don't think that you only get 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever. If you need my help, we're going to schedule it, and we're going to get you on. That way I can talk to you about the website, the breeding programs on the website, your breeding program, your birds, try to figure out where you are and where you need to go. Okay.
And you also, if you're thinking about it and you're not sure, go check out the website video tour. You can catch that on YouTube.
Yeah. So just go to www.breedersacademy.com to subscribe. Okay. You ready to get into the topic, Nancy?
Yeah. Do I have the right banner up for us?
No, I'm going to change it all in a second.
Okay. Doesn't matter then.
Okay.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay. So I'm doing something new here, so just bear with me. I'm going to try to use a PowerPoint type presentation, and it's going to take some juggling on my part because I can't have the PowerPoint on my screen and my outline at the same time. So I'm going to be going back and forth to make sure we have it all on there. So hopefully it won't lose momentum, and I'll keep it interesting. So let's go ahead and do this. Okay.
Can I ask you a question first?
Sure.
Why did you decide to do like pretty much this is like a PowerPoint presentation, but why did you decide to do it on the subject matter of laws and selective breeding? What was the trigger for that?
Well, like I said, it was spur of the moment. And I was going through some of my topics in my projects list, and it just looked interesting. I think the main reason was not only did it, I was like, oh, okay, this looks fun to do. This is something that we can do. And I didn't have to do a lot of preparation for it because we kind of had it already set up. I think the main reason that I wanted to do it when I saw it was the fact, what I was telling you earlier, was that we're getting a lot of new people. And I just think that rehashing some of the old topics that we've done before is not a bad thing, especially right now. Mm-hmm. because I think these new people, if they can see it in a new light, a new way, and have a new understanding of breeding, they might, like I said, get more serious about creating their strain, improving their strain, and finding ways to maintain their strain. And because I think for most people, their idea of what selective breeding represents is far from what the truth, what really should occur, or what really should take place. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. I just hope I have this laid out good enough, because it was such spur of the moment. So
I'm sure you're going to do just fine.
And I'm using a new platform that I'm not really used to. Okay, so here we go. And my computer's playing tricks with me. Okay. Oh, is that what you asked me?
Oh, actually, no. That was just off the top of my head. But there you go. Why selective breeding matters.
Okay. The foundation of every great bloodline starts with selective breeding. Okay. So yeah, you want to create a family that builds consistency. You want a nice uniform family. You want a family that, when you produce, they're going to produce the same traits every single time. You're not going to get surprises when it comes to performance. Okay. And when you have a really good family with really good genetics, you want to preserve them. You don't want to have to add new blood all the time to always fix them or refresh them and that kind of things. And you want a family that lasts your lifetime. And with the Founders Program, you can actually do that. You can keep the family going forever. Okay. And it's a program that's broken up into 3 phases, and those phases are broken up into 6 stages. And you just follow it from the Adam and the Eve until you get to the foundation stage, where you fine-tune them into a really good family. And from there, you just keep them going. You can, if you follow the Founders Program, you can maintain them for the rest of your lives, without adding outside blood. And if there is a time when you didn't do it right and the birds weren't coming out like you were hoping, there's a process in the Founders Program that you can use to fix that too. Okay, where you could add some new blood, but to do it properly so you're not messing up what you've already done. Okay. So
let me ask a quick question on that one. So can you go back to the other screen? So, okay, why selective breeding matters, the foundation of every great bloodline. If you don't do the build consistency, improve performance, preserve superior genetics, and shape future generations, if you miss any one of those steps, what happens?
Well, these aren't the steps exactly. These are the outcomes, the results.
Okay, those are the results. So those are the goals that you're trying to meet, right? Mm-hmm. So if those goals, if any one of those goals are not important to you, what happens?
I'm not really sure how to answer the. Okay, so what do you? Okay, you need to reframe that. I'm not sure where you're going with that.
Let me state this and see if you agree or disagree with it. If you miss any of these goals, say the only one that is important to you is improving performance, okay?
Oh.
And you're not building consistency, and you're not preserving the superior birds, because the only thing you're thinking about is performance ability, then what happens in your journey between today and say 30 years from now, because you're planning on, breeding for the lifetime of you. So what problems are you going to have if you
Nancy,
don't
which
have
question Nancy, which question do you want me to answer? You're asking 3 questions in one thing.
Okay, answer the one that you remember.
Okay. The way I'll sum that up is, it's not about the individual goals. It's the whole picture. And when I'm selecting birds, and when I'm improving a strain, and when I'm trying to create a family, I'm looking for the complete package. I want them to have everything. I want them to be able to do everything that I want them to do. Okay. So it's all the complete package. If you're looking at trying to create a family by adding new blood all the time, you're just reconning the genes. If you want to improve a family by selecting one trait at a time and improving them that way, that's tandem mating, and it never works. Not just rarely never works, it never works. Okay. And so that's what we teach in the Breeders Academy is to know how to select them, how to breed them, and how to improve them. And I would just say that if I understand Nancy's question properly, I'm always looking at the complete package with the individual birds and how I select them in the family. Okay, so let me get back to... Okay. So these... Okay, I can... Sometimes I... This is where your question should have been. Actually, not on the last banner, but on this banner. That's where that question should have been. Okay. So yeah, there's goals, and we hit these are the goals we try to meet in the Breeders' Academy and with the Founders Program when it comes to selective breeding. We're looking to create a new strain. So if you have a bunch of birds, or you say you have a cock and hen, we call them the Adam and Eve. You could also call it your seed fowl, and you want to create a family from that. Then the idea is to use a proper breeding program to make that happen, okay? And understand how that breeding program works in a way that you can follow it step by step and improve your family each generation, okay? Some of you are in different places. Like these may be the 3 goals, but you might be in a different place where you're just starting with the strain, or you're starting with the cock and hen, which is going to be your new strain, or you already have a new strain, or you already have a strain, or you have a family of birds and you think they need to be improved. And to me, I think all families need to improve. I've had my family out here for over 30 years, and as good as they are and how uniform and consistent and uniform, predictable and repeatable they actually are, I mean, a lot of people look at them and go, wow, these are some of the nicest birds I've ever seen. And I think they are. But and Nancy would ask me all the time, and I could still see them. I can still look at them and look for ways. How do I say this? I can see ways they still need to be improved, because I'm never done. Okay. And then even though they need to be improved, and let's say you get them to a certain state of perfection, some of you just want to maintain them. You just want to get to a point where you're maintaining the strain. And really, the only thing you're maintaining is an established strain. You're not maintaining a bunch of birds with contrasting characteristics and things like that. Birds that have different traits, but in the same family, you're actually trying to maintain a family that comes, like I said a second ago, uniform, consistent, predictable, and repeatable. And that's what the Founders Program actually does. It helps you do those 3 things. Any questions, Nancy?
No, I think we're doing good. I have something written down, but this isn't the time to talk about it. So go ahead.
Okay. So this is cumbersome. I'm going to have to figure out a better way to do this.
No, this is great.
Okay. The laws of selective, or the law of selection. Okay. I'm trying to see if these match my... Okay. Every mating you do should have a purpose. Okay. You should never be putting birds together and just wondering what you're going to get. Okay. So it's a lot easier to do that when you understand the genetics behind them. So if I'm looking at a bird, I'm looking at the traits that bird expressing, I should know the genetics well enough to know that when I stick 2 birds together, what I'm going to get. Do I understand the monogenic side of breeding, the dominant recessive? Okay. Do I understand the polygenics that I'm dealing with? Because it's going to change them quite a bit, especially when I put two birds together. I'm going to get a lot of unpredictable birds out of that. Okay. So if I understand the genetic factors, then I understand what I'm going to get. It makes the job a lot easier. Okay. I need to be willing to do the unfun part of it, I guess you could say. The undesirable part of that is getting rid of birds that have defects and disqualifications, that have flaws. I got to be willing to get rid of birds that are sick and substandard, that don't match their breed or don't represent their breed properly. So culling becomes a big part of the process. Okay. And then once I get the birds all culled, I've culled through the birds, I've gotten rid of the birds that have issues, it's going to leave me a lot less birds to deal with, but that's a good thing. Okay. Now from what I consider the standouts, I'm going to be able to select the birds that I need to move the strain forward. Okay. And then be able to understand, let's put it this way, to be able to evaluate the birds that I'm getting, evaluate the birds that I'm mating, look at the birds that they're producing, and evaluate those, because they're not all going to come out perfect. They're all going to have their little issues, and decide which ones are going to be willing to be the ones I'm willing to use to move them forward. The idea is to make sure the offspring are better than the parents every generation. I want to build the only way I'm going to move the family forward is if I'm moving in the right direction, which is progression rather than regression. So if I'm looking at the offspring really well, I'm knowing what birds to cull, I'm knowing which birds to select, and then from there I know which ones to breed, then I'm going to be off to a good start. I'm going to be doing it properly. The idea is to make sure that the ones I do move forward with are at least a little bit better than the parents, and I'm going to be in good shape. Okay.
Okay, can I ask? I have
Sure.
a question.
Yep.
Okay, how does a new breeder school themselves on genetics? Does understanding the breed a part of understanding the genetic factors?
Okay. Yes and no. I think you need to learn. Okay, as far as genetics are concerned, a single comb is a single comb no matter what breed's on. Okay. A red plumage is a red plumage no matter what breed it happens to be on. Okay, so understanding the genetics is one thing, but you do, to actually improve them and select them and know which birds to move forward with, you really do need to know the breed. It's important that you know which birds do represent their breed. So I think they kind of go hand in hand. I think you do need to take some time to actually learn your breed, understand what makes up the breed, understand the flaws that are well known within that breed, but understand the genetic traits that that breed carries. You know, the genetic factors of those traits that breed's known for will help you a lot. So that if you get birds that they're carrying a contrasting characteristic, you know what to do about it. You know which birds to select. And color is a big part of that, but type and conformation to me is number one. And even before that, I would say health and vigor is, you can't create a family, you can't move a family forward if they're not healthy and vigorous. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does, and it leads us right into the next slide.
Okay.
Culling. Because if you don't understand the genetics of the breed that you're desiring to pursue, you're not going to be able to decipher what to cull and what not to cull.
Well, think of culling like this. Yes, they need to represent their breed. Anything that doesn't represent their breed needs to go, because then you're going in the wrong direction. Understand defects. I mean, in the Breeders' Academy, we have a defects and disqualification course where we talk about the various defects that do exist. And there's like between 80 and 90. I don't remember the exact number, but there's I think someone counted one time, there was like 88 of them, 88 different defects our birds could actually have. And anytime I find a new one, I stick it in there. Okay. Some of them are disqualifications, but knowing what those are, because a lot of times if you don't really understand what you're looking at, I've seen it so many times where people look at the birds, there's some really blatant defects those birds are expressing, and they just don't see it. They didn't know it was a big deal, or they didn't know that was a defect at all. Once they went on the course and checked things out, then they knew. Then when it showed up, and they understood. I've had so many members look at that defects course and have to go out to the yard and realize that more than half their birds were defective or had serious disqualifications. And they started culling them and weeding them down to the best birds they had and started moving forward with those, which made a big difference. Understanding that sick birds, there's, like, I was talking to Dr. Gallardo one time, and he was saying, or it might even be Peter Brown, that once a bird's sick, I think it was Dr. Gallardo this time, when a bird's sick, I mean, there's a lot of medications out there, and you can medicate that bird. Rarely do you ever get rid of the disease. You may knock down the symptoms, but they tend to be chronic. They tend to express that disease again. And then a lot of times, if they get a disease, they're probably going to die. You know, they don't really recover like they should. So a lot of times it's just best to cull them. And if you're actually going to work on a family and you want to improve them, I suggest that you don't breed anything that's been sick. I don't care if they got better or not. If they've been sick, I would not use them in my breeding program. So that's a big deal. And then, like I said, making sure they represent their breed. But I like to look at it like this. Selection progresses a strain and culling maintains a strain. So anytime I'm in the selection process, that I'm always looking for the birds that are going to improve the family, take it to the next level. If I'm culling, I'm knocking my numbers down. I'm getting down to the best birds. I'm actually maintaining that family. Any bird with a fault has the potential to bring that family down, and that's, well, like we'll just say it's going in the wrong direction. Okay, and when you think of a family, and let's say someone comes to looks at your yard, and they're going to have an opinion about what they see. Okay. And if they see a lot of good birds, but they happen to see a one or two, maybe three that aren't that great, their first impression of their first, but their lasting impression of that family is going to be on the worst birds on your yard a lot of times. So I would say the quality of your family is determined by how well or how tight and how good your family is by how well you cull. So if you cull really good, you cull them down to the very best birds you have. Not only are you going to improve the family because you breed from the best birds, but the overall quality of your family is going to be better because you did that. That makes sense, Nancy?
It makes sense. And then also, if you're keeping a bird that has been sick but has gotten better, and it basically the sickness has become hidden because it got healthy, it's still there, and any stresses can bring that sickness back out. And you may think, well, I'll just keep my hen, say, in a nice quiet place, and she'll never be stressed, and I'll feed her good and give her great water and a nice nest box and stuff like that, and she'll be fine. But you don't have any control of the weather, so anything can stress that bird out. A hawk could be flying overhead for 3 or 4 days, just irritating the crap out of her, or we have a really bad heat spell, or if it's winter and it's raining so much, all the pens are muddy. That's different stresses. So I wouldn't play with fire. If you've got a hen or rooster that has been sick or is sick, it's best to just terminate them, in my opinion.
Well, sickness is a weakness. If the bird got sick in the first place, it has a weakness. A lot of times they're only getting sick because they have that weakness. So I want birds that are resistant to that particular disease. And I'm not going to breed to the bird that's resistant if it once have expressed that disease. So no, I'm looking for birds that has good constitutional vigor. I want hens with good mitochondrial DNA, and there's signs of that. And I want birds that never get sick. So let me say this. There is a caveat, because I don't want to give some people lost hope, is when you're starting and that's all you have, then you got to do what you got to do. And I would say you do what you can to keep those birds alive. You get some offspring on the ground, you keep them, try to get the family going the best you can, but with the goal of getting them off the medications, with the goal of getting to a point where you can start culling the sickest birds and only breeding to the healthiest, I guess you could say. Okay, getting to a point when I'm not having to give them medications anymore. So it means hatching a lot of chicks, having a really good selection, and picking the best birds from that. And if you're planning on, for some people, and the Gamefowl community is notorious for this, is that they believe that dealing with sickness, dealing with birds that have disease, and having medications on your shelf and having to treat them all the time is just common practice. And it doesn't have to be that way. And I would not do it that way. I haven't had medications. I haven't given my birds medications in 30 years or more. I haven't wormed my birds in over 20. I will cull the birds that show weakness. If they're infested with worms, I will cull that bird. So
Now, I think there's a caveat to this is there are some diseases out there that will transfer to the egg or transfer to the chicks. So knowing what diseases that do that, you may be a lost cause.
Okay, let me go. So you do have horizontal diseases. So you cull the ones that are sick as they express the sickness. Some of them, like Nancy said, are vertical or pass from the hen to the chick to the egg. Okay. The only thing you can do there is really pay attention to actual breeders and get them tested. Figure out which ones are free of some of these vertical, what I call breeder diseases. And if you can get to the point where you go ahead and test them, you figure out which ones are positive, get rid of those, breed to the negative ones, and move forward. Some of them are only expressed when they're stressed. And if you can breed them, keep them healthy, keep them stress-free, and breed them, chances are you can get by some of these diseases. So yeah, understanding whether they're horizontal or vertical does make a difference. But it's the vertical ones, which I call the breeder disease, are the more devastating, because if you don't figure out who the positive ones are, then you're just going to keep perpetuating the diseases. And there's quite a few of them.
Yes, and we have that information inside the Breeders Academy, because we have done interviews with Dr. Gallardo and also Peter Brown on a whole bunch of different diseases out there. I want to pull this up real quick because it's just proof of the pudding. Cull. I've tried to give birds the benefit of the doubt, ended up feeding them for 3 to 6 months just to still end up culling them anyway.
Yeah. And it's like that, not only with diseases, but with defects too. A lot of people will say, I think that's going to fix itself over time. And it, usually it doesn't. Now, if they're like baby chicks and they seem to have, let's say, a squirrel tail, then, or something like that, then I'll wait. There's certain traits that at certain ages, I will wait a little longer to see, but I won't wait forever. Okay. There's some defects. As soon as I see them, I know right away, like duck toe and sunken eye, and there's others. But there's some defects that once I see them, as soon as I see them, they're gone. Okay. But see, this goes with knowing your birds. And Derek's he's a member of the Breeders' Academy, and he's had his birds for a long time. He knows his birds. And that's what from the better breeders, they understand their birds. They know their birds really well. They know when to cull for the most part, and they know when to wait. And if you have a new strain, or you're trying to create a new strain and you have birds you're not really familiar with, sometimes it does benefit keeping them a little longer to get to know the birds, get to know the traits that they're going to express, get to know the defects that you're going to see from time to time, and whether they are going to grow out of those defects. But also get to know the defects course on the Breeders' Academy, so you know the detriment of them, the deleterious side of some of them, and know that some of them are never going to get better, know which ones those are. That's really important too. I really appreciate that, Derek. That's awesome. Okay. So some of the things cull for. Poor health, always. Anytime you see a sick bird, I don't care what age they are, if they're sick, they're unthrifty, they just don't have a lot of energy, they just don't look good overall, serious or definite defects, they got to go. Sickness, they got to go. Anything. They're respiratory, whatever, they got to go. Chances are, even coccidiosis, if you're starting to see blood, chances are you're not going to fix that. It's probably most likely too late. Okay. Vigor, you're going to see that. The only time I've seen, okay, let's put it this way. Vigor is an interesting one, because although vigor, you normally associate that with inbreeding depression, which a lot of birds or a lot of people, let's put it this way. I've only seen inbreeding depression, maybe evidence of it, true inbreeding depression, a handful of times, and not on my yard, but other people's yards. Okay. As far as lack of vigor, mitochondrial DNA has a big part of that. So if you're selecting hens that just don't seem to be that healthy, that thrifty, that active, they've been sick or are sick, They produce offspring that just, they don't have a lot, maybe that not a great hatch. The hatchability is kind of off, and they're a little lethargic. The chicks just aren't very active. Then I would probably get rid of her and her baby chicks. And you start to see those kind of things, especially when it comes to vigor, when they get older. The older they get, that's when you start seeing it. Unless they just have really poor mitochondrial DNA, then they just were never good in the first place. And chances are they came from a hen that didn't have very good mitochondrial DNA. So vigor is a big one, but it takes, sometimes I would say it takes a trained eye to figure it out, and having a family that you know really well to actually see it sometimes. Fertility and hatchability. Fertility is a funny thing in that it's not inheritable. A lot of external things can happen that would cause a cock to be infertile, because usually the fact that they're infertile is usually a cock's thing. Overweight, the environment, his age, those kind of things will determine, can be a determinant when it comes to fertility. Hatchability is more of a hen thing. So if there's chicks in the shell and they're just not hatching, I usually mark that up to hens that have been sick or are sick, low mitochondrial, really poor mitochondrial DNA, that kind of thing. Age, too. Poor type and conformation. If they just don't have the right type and conformation for their breed, they got to go, because they're going to mess you up. And those are so important, because without the type and conformation, you don't have a family. They don't represent their breed. Like I said, defects and disqualifications. See a defect, get rid of it. Now, bad temperament. I have bad temperament here. Undesirable behaviors. Bad temperament could be environment, but it also can be genetic. But it is also polygenic. So understanding how that all works. Like if I had one cock and that's all I had, and he had a bad, like he's a man fighter or man hater or whatever you want to call him. If that's all I have, then I can work around it, because I understand the genetics of poor temperament, and I can fix that over time. But you definitely don't want to, because usually when you see a cock with poor temperament, it's a man fighter, is usually associated from a mother that has really poor, let's put it this way, she's flighty, she's high strung a lot of times. You just barely walk by her pen, she's going through the roof. She's acting irrational. Those hens tend to produce man fighters, cocks with poor temperament. Okay. So if I see that, I'd probably get rid of her right away. And that usually takes care of the man fighting cocks right away. But like I said, if that's all you have, we can work around it, because it is a polygenic trait. Those things can be fixed over time. And then any substandard birds, because if they're not representing their breed, then you're wasting your time.
And for those of you backyard breeders or backyard lovers of raising chickens, and I know how hard it is not to do not do this. Okay, I'm laboring to get it out. If a chick is having problems getting out of the shell, do not help that chick get out of the shell. You're just ensuing a lot more problems down the lane that you're going to have, because if that chick was not strong enough getting out of the shell by his or herself, then it's a sick chick.
Okay. So the next law of selective breeding is understanding the phenotype, the phenotypic selection. Because the truth is, we can only, especially until we get to know the family, we've had them for quite a while and understand what they're going to produce, is we can only select by the traits that they show us, the observable traits. So if I'm looking at a cock or I'm looking at a hen, I can only at the time go by what they're showing me. So if I'm seeing issues, I got to react to those particular issues. If I'm seeing really good traits, I'm seeing really good temperament, I'm seeing really good color type conformation, then I know I'm good. If I'm not seeing defects, then I know I'm good. Okay. So you can only go by what they're showing you. And so we're looking for, out of all the birds they produce, I'm looking for the few that stand out that I can move the family forward. Okay. And then anything that doesn't measure up, I cull them. And usually what I have out here is my A birds, which are my definite breeders. I decided they're part of the breeding program. I do have a handful of backups. Okay. And I do have, anytime I have what I call I have my A birds, my breeder birds. I have my Bs that are my backups, and Cs are birds that I'm willing to give away to my members. For some of you, you could sell them. Okay. I've already culled through them. I've gotten rid of the sickness, the defects, and any birds that don't represent their breed. Whatever is left, they're really good birds, and they're going to make they'll make great birds for others who want to create a strain. They're going to make great Adam and Eves, great seed fowl. Okay. They're just not my best birds, but they do represent their breed. Okay. For a family like mine that's been around for a long time, that can be very subtle. So if you get birds from me that are in the C class, you're getting really good birds, because I'm only going to keep so many for my brood fowl. Even if they all came good, I'm still only keeping so many. So I'm going to be very particular about the ones I use. And then I use a handful for my backups. Now I've heard, let me see if I can get this right. I've heard a term called the king, the heir, and the spare. And that would assume that I'm dealing with one group of birds that are like related. Like I've got the main broodcock, I got his son, and then I've got the handful of birds after that. And that may work if you're not using a proper breeding program, and that you're trying to so you have your backup and you have some behind that, because you want to keep that going. But that's not exactly what I call family. That's just a group of birds. If you're using a proper breeding program, it wouldn't be the king, the heir, and the spare, because it doesn't work like that. I wouldn't be able to. How would I manage that for every bird I have on my farm, especially the ones that are heading all my brood pens? It wouldn't work like that. So what I would be using is my A birds, which are my standouts, have become my brood fowl. They're part of my breeding program. And then I just have a group of birds that are just associated with the family, that are not associated, but they are within that family, that are just backups. And it doesn't mean that I have to have a whole bunch of them. I just need a few. Okay. And then, like I said, I don't have anything other than that, because after that, I can give them away. I can do whatever I want with them. So I'm not a real favor of the king, heir, spare idea. I don't think it works for if you're using a proper breeding program. I really don't think that's the way to go. It sounds nice and everything, but it doesn't really work. So I like the A, B, and C class. I think it works better for someone who's using a proper breeding program.
Would you say that's because the king, the heir, and the spare is particularly the king being one, the spare being, the heir being the second, and so you're just talking three birds. Whereas if you have an A group, a B group, and a C group, you have a group of your A and a group of your B and a group of your C.
Yeah, but I would define it even closer, because the heir means it's the king's son. Okay. Well, it's hard to talk about really without talking about the Founders Program, how that works and why that wouldn't work. Mm-hmm. And I think my members do know what I mean by that, that trying to keep a son from every one of my breeders within the program would be impossible. And chances are it's not the best representative. God, it's really tough. Like I probably should do a master's class video where we can associate that with the Founders Program, why it doesn't work.
Yeah, let's.
Yeah, then I can explain it even better. But for a proper breeding program, let me talk to my members just for a second. If you understand stage 5 of the Founders Program, can you imagine keeping a heir if for all my breeders? And if you understand stage 6 and how that works, that if I needed a spare, if I needed to replace a bird, that I would do stage 6 to get the replacement that I need, that an heir isn't really what I would need. And then just having a bunch of birds behind that. The only way I would see that working is if I had like a spiral mating system that worked side by side with my Founders Program. Then I guess you could say that it works, like you could use those for that. But no, it's a nice, I hear that from time to time and I kind of laugh. I kind of giggle and I'm like, no. I mean, if you just have a handful of birds and you don't have a real, what I would call a true family, but you have a handful of birds and you just try to keep them going, I guess you could look at it that way. But for a proper breeding program like the Founders Program, No, it doesn't work at all. So I just thought it was interesting because I hear that from time to time. I'm like, I can tell you guys aren't using a proper breeding program. So when you're looking at the phenotype of the bird, you're looking at the type and conformation of the bird. You're looking at the overall health and vigor of the bird. You're looking at the carriage, the station, feather quality. For some of the breeds that have color pattern, comb type, leg color, growth, and then I guess you can consider development, growth rate and development, or the growth and development of the young, because you want a group of birds that actually grow and develop properly, and you're going to get that from a really good hen. That's why I think mitochondrial DNA is so important. But when the chicks are actually developing and growing, if you have the right hen, they should be growing at the right pace, at the right rate together. Now, every now and then you'll see one of the chicks that are falling behind. Okay, again, we're talking about the phenotypic selection. So if I see one bird falling behind, I don't waste any time with that. I just get rid of it. I get rid of that bird. But I also if I still see those kind of inconsistencies, then I would look at the hen and think, okay, what's going on with her? The only time I would probably expect that kind of inconsistency is if I'm dealing with unrelated birds, and I would normally get that, because whenever you're doing outcross, across, or some kind of infusion, you're usually dealing with hybrid vigor, heterosis, gene flow, whatever you want to call it. And that's when you see the ups and downs, the peaks and valleys of the within the offspring. And then you have to be more selective. And as they grow and develop, you're obviously going to get rid of the birds that are falling behind, for sure. Okay. And then you got production ability, performance ability, and reproductive performance, which is probably one of the biggest deals. Because if they're not reproducing properly, then you need to figure out why. And it may be something you probably have to cull for. If it's something you can't work around, or there's some issues developing, then you might have to deal with it. Usually once you get the family to the foundation stage, you don't see a lot of reproductive problems, because you select them properly. You selected the right birds for breeders. Okay. Any questions on that, Nancy?
No.
Keep wanting to click the wrong one. How we doing? I need to speed up the process here.
Yeah, we're almost at an hour.
Yeah, there was some things I wanted to talk to before, so let's see if I can speed it up. Okay, genotypic selection. So when you have the phenotypic selection, it's basically the traits that they're expressing, the observable traits. Now, the genotype is interesting in that you're going to see things as you're working on the family, and you're going from generation to generation. They're going to start expressing certain things, and I call that that's the genetic variability that you're going to see, the sudden variations, the ones that just kind of show up once in a while here and there. And then you got to decide, is that a trait that I want to perpetuate, or that's going to hurt the strain? And then I got to cull or select accordingly. And if I like it, then I exaggerate it. So whenever as far as the genotype is concerned, it's a complete bird, the whole bird, inside out, the genetics, everything. Okay. And you only can find that out by breeding them. You're only going to find that out by looking at the offspring that they produce, because the offspring tell you everything you want to know about the parents. So you look at the offspring show you what you need to know. You do your selection or your culling accordingly, and then you move the family forward. That's all you can do when it comes to the genotype, because unlike, say, dogs that can do tests, like a DNA test, it would tell them a lot about what's in that bird, what's going on with the bird genetically and what have you. We don't have that kind of, I do hear from time to time that there's an organization out there that can do some of the tests, but you got to be willing to put the money up for it. I don't know how easy or how expensive it is. And I would say that if you're dealing with unrelated birds, like in the beginning of a program, then I don't think those tests are going to mean a whole lot, to tell you the truth. I think you just need to breed them and then move forward from there. The only time and it's not very common with chickens, is the only time I think those tests would be important if they're carrying certain genetic defects or genetic diseases that you need to be concerned about, because the main thing you don't want to do is to breed two birds with the same defect, because then you're going to express a defect. But I believe that a lot of times we're getting our birds when they're young stags and pullets, and go ahead and breed them. I'm not a big fan of breeding young birds, but for test mating, which we should do all the time, that will tell us what we need to know about the family. So if we're doing the proper test mating, we'll know right away if we have an issue and how big that issue is. And if they're producing genetic defects or genetic diseases, then you may not be able to breed those birds, because that's all that test is showing you, for as far as I'm concerned, is whether those birds should be bred together or bred at all. That's it. And we can do that, as many breedings as we need to do, and many test matings that I would have to do. I couldn't justify paying a lot of money for breeding tests to tell me to tell me those things, because it doesn't matter whether I do that test or not. I'm still going to have to breed them, and I'm still going to have to select the ones that are going to move the family forward, and cull the ones that are detrimental or deleterious to the family. So,
where I understand why dog breeders will do those types of testings, because they don't have as many offspring breedings as we do. We can do multiple of offspring breedings in a season, where they can't, and it's a wealth of information for them to have, before they even start their breeding program. Same, with goats.
If you're a dog breeder, I would say do the test, definitely.
Yeah,
because you're not going to get as many offspring. We can produce a lot of birds in our breedings. We can cull them and we can eat them, that kind of thing. It's a little harder for dogs, I admit. I would say you need to do the test. But for chickens, I don't know. I've heard of a couple people doing the test, and I didn't think they gained a whole lot from it. You're still going to have to breed them. You're still going to have to check out the offspring. You're still going to select the few that are better than the parents, and and that's what you're going to move forward with. So, okay. Let me move back here. This is kind of a pain in the butt, actually. Gene flow. Okay, so when we look at this is kind of I'm trying to figure out where to go, because I could spend a whole episode on this. It relates to outcrossing, crossbreeding, and fusion. Anytime you're adding new blood in biological or evolutionary biology terms, is basically gene flow, migration, that kind of thing. And so anytime I'm adding new blood, I'm starting over. Anytime I'm adding new blood, I'm introducing new traits, new genes, new alleles, new deleterious and defective deleterious genes and defects. And so anytime I do that, I disrupt the gene pool and change the family. The only time that family or that group of birds becomes a family is when I stop the flow of genes. I stop bringing new birds, and I start improving them through selective breeding and using a proper breeding program. Anytime if I feel like I need to refresh, which I think is a really bad thing to do. I don't think people understand what they're doing when they do that. Well, hopefully we'll get to that, because we're running out of time. Anytime they do that, they're just disrupting the gene pool, and starting over. Okay, so
would you consider gene flow to be bad? Like, that's a procedure you do not want to do, correct?
Hold on. Okay, so if you have a family of birds, especially when let's put it this way. There was a caveat to that. Gene flow, outcrossing, crossbreeding, and fusion. The only time I would say those are acceptable is when you're first starting a strain. In the very beginning of your breeding program, chances are you're breeding birds that are unrelated, breeding birds that are from different breeders, okay? Breeding birds that have different traits, maybe even contrasting characteristics, okay? A lot of times that's all we can do is get the best birds we can and start forward. Once you get into the breeding program, especially when you get to the point when they're uniform, consistent, predictable, and repeatable, adding new blood would be the worst thing you could ever do, because you're basically starting over. So, yeah, I think it would be a bad thing, depending on where you're at in the breeding program. Just know that every time you add new blood, you're starting over right from the beginning of the program. So this is basically what we've already said. See where I want to cover here. Yeah, so I've pretty much covered this pretty good. Let's move on. Am I on the right one?
You didn't have the other banner on the outline. You have the one that you have up on the outline.
Huh, okay. Well, this is the next one. So the main determination of genetic variability would be, this looks like something that should have been with the other one here. Because you have outcrossing, crossing, and infusion, and then you have meiosis. Now, the crossover event, recombination, fertilization, that's all part of meiosis. So I'm not sure why we think, it looks like I didn't create it properly. And one of the things I do like on this banner, which I do want you to understand, is that although variation, once you have a family, I mean, you do want to get them as close as you can. You want to get to the point where you're not seeing a lot of variation, because you want them to be real predictable and repeatable, and you want them all to be uniform, consistent. So a lot of variation would be a bad thing. And this is something we see in the beginning of the program, because they are unrelated. There's a lot of hidden traits within them when we start. We don't know what's in there when we start a lot of times. And like the Founders program has a cleanup process. I think every program should have a cleanup process that helps you weed through those genes, those traits, get them to the point when they are less, have less genetic variability, to the point when they have less contrasting characteristics, and you get them to where they're uniform and what have you. But you, in this is one of those things that should be in the Founders program, or not the Founders program, but the Breeders Roundtable. In that, I'm trying to see how to say this without saying something that has to do with the Founders program. Okay, there's certain part of the Founders program, because variation in the beginning is expected, but the cleanup process does clean them up to the point where you see less variability. But you don't want to get rid of all the variation. And if you saw the way the stage 5 and 6 of the Founders program is, it does make them more uniform. It makes them a nice tight family, but it maintains the variability, the genetic diversity, and the genetic variability that you need to keep them going without bringing outside blood. That's the magic, I guess you could say, of the Founders program, that it does that. Because most breeding programs, all they do is they get you to a state of perfection, but there's nowhere to go after that. And then you have to bring in outside blood. Otherwise, you do breed them to a point where you hit the wall, the dead end zone, whatever you want to call it, where they have no genetic diversity, no variation, and you've bred them into a genetic bottleneck that you can't recover from. And that's not what you want to do. And that's the magic of the Founders program, is it prevents that bottlenecking that tends to occur. And without doing without getting yourself into the bottleneck, you're forced into bringing outside blood to kind of keep the family alive, which basically you start it all over. I don't even know why you put them in a breeding program in the first place if you're going to do that. So that help. After saying that, it helps explain what I want to say on the bottom there. Without variation, selection is impossible. And without selection, improvement is possible. So you need some variation to select, and it's the selection that you use to actually improve the family. But the breeding program has to be set up in a way that you still get the variation you need, and then you can keep the family pure without adding outside blood. And that's the one thing about the Founders program I don't see in any other breeding program. Okay, so let's move on. I'm trying to go a little faster here. Okay, so meiosis. Now, a lot of people disregard this. They don't think it's a big deal. They don't understand it. So they just kind of go by it. What I like about meiosis is not only is it helps you understand. Now, okay, let me go at two different angles here. One is, if you have a pure family that's uniform, consistent, predictable, and repeatable, meiosis just does its thing, and you don't see the difference because the offspring are very uniform, consistent. You don't get a lot of variation within the offspring. Although this is where variation begins. Okay. But if I have a family that's very uniform, consistent, I think I need to refresh them, bring them in. What meiosis does is it shows you how detrimental that is. How you took a family that's very pure, very uniform, very consistent. They were repeating themselves and they were very predictable when you did it, to a family that all of a sudden now you got everything's unpredictable. You got things you didn't see before. Now you got defects that you weren't seeing before. Deleterious genes are starting to show up. Their type and conformations change. Now they got colors they didn't have before, just because you wanted to refresh them. Okay. So what meiosis does, it shows you why that's a bad thing. When you have a pure family, it's coming uniform, consistent. Meiosis just does this thing. You don't know the difference. It doesn't matter. This is what you need. And it's whether you're dealing with a pure family or cross family, meiosis is happening no matter what. This is a production of gametes. This is the process of fertilization. So what's happening is you get, let's say, like for me, let's say I have a cock sitting out there. Okay. His mother and father, which you probably don't have anymore, the chromosomes of his mother and father are in that cock. So what happens is the chromosomes come together, they wrap around each other, and when they separate, they swap parts. You can see it in the third section there. That's where the variation comes. Okay, then they go to 2 divisions, and now you end up with 4 unique gametes, which is the sperm or the egg. They're different from each other. Okay. The closer the family is, the more pure the family is, the less variation you're going to see between the gametes. And they become very predictable. The offspring produce all look the same. Okay. So that's why when you have an established family, the worst thing you can do is bring in outside blood and create the genetic diversity that you didn't have before, that you probably didn't want. And this does change like monogenic traits, dominant recessive, quite a bit. But what it really does is it messes up and destroys the polygenic traits, which is actually in a lot of ways the most important part of the bird. We call it the form and function traits. So when you have birds that are dependent on a certain type of performance, that's a polygenic trait. When you add new blood, you totally destroyed that. Whatever you thought was predictable at one time as far as performance is completely different than it was before. Okay, you've completely lost it. Because when it comes to polygenic traits, it's about breeding to the highest intensity, looking for the birds that have the highest intensity and breeding those together every generation, and you improve that particular trait. And you hope to get birds that are as close to the complete package as possible, so that you're selecting multiple traits at the same time and you're improving them at the same time. But breed, and you do that over generations after generations, but you bring in the wrong bird, it can destroy that overnight. Okay, what's the matter?
For example, those that breed acyl into their American Gamefowl.
Oh, you definitely change them, because now you're crossing. Any improvement you think you're seeing from there, it's not that the fact that you improved the polygenics, which you didn't. You see what you're seeing there, we talk about all the time, but what you're seeing there is hybrid vigor, heterosis, the process of gene flow, okay, which is very temporary. It's not inheritable. You can't pass those traits to the next generation, okay? And so what happens is you breed them, you get a bump in the offspring, which you're like, oh my God, this was the greatest breeding ever. No, it's just heterosis, hybrid vigor, okay? Then you go to breed those together, and you see a completely different result. The offspring are all over the place. And you just figure, oh, something must have happened. So you bring in outside blood. Now you've got mongrels, because you have multiple bloodlines in them at this point. You don't get the hybrid vigor you once got. It's a very diluted level of hybrid vigor. So it's not the full impact you would have got from 2 pure families. And they're more unpredictable than they were from the original hybrid cross. So anytime you're dealing with pure breeds, bring them together, you get really good hybrid vigor. It actually is impressive, but it's just not inheritable. You can't pass it off. Once you're dealing with birds that have multiple bloodlines in them, they're just mongrels. You create even more mongrellism when you breed those together, and you get everything under the sun. So it just means that because they weren't true hybrids, they're actually mongrels. You'll get some good, some mediocre, and some bad. You better hatch a lot of chicks to be able to select from. That's all I can say. Can you create a family from that? If they represent their breed, you find a cock and hen out of that represents their breed, doesn't have any defects, are healthy and everything, that they could be your seed fowl. That's what the cleanup process of the Founders Program actually does. It takes birds like that, cleans them up, and makes a family out of them.
But I do believe that the two mating that I was just discussing, some that think that, oh, I'm going to breed this in and then I'm going to breed it back out. It never leaves. It may be hidden and you may not be seeing it, but it's there. And when that bird is bred to another bird that has the same genes, it's going to come right back up.
Well, what's there still is a recessive, the detrimental defects in the deleterious genes, the harmful genes. That's what stays. What you lose is, a lot of times, is the homozygous dominant genes. Now, you might have some heterozygous dominant genes, but now you've got a split in the genetics, meaning that they will sometimes, because they're heterozygous and they're dominant, they'll express that dominant, but now they're not pure, which you're going to see a big difference in the offspring after that. Okay. And then what you don't keep is the high intensity of the polygenic traits. So what you do keep is some of those recessives we're talking about aren't always bad, but you do end up with recessives that are bad. And like Nancy said, those never go away. Those are the ones that never go away. And this is just a chart on the crossover event, which is part of meiosis, where the chromosomes come together, they wrap around. When they split, they swap parts from each other, and that's where you get your variation. So that's all this is. And then this one here is part of meiosis, but it really shows how Gregor Mendel's independent assortment of genes works. Because a lot of people think that that if I have a red bird and he's straight comb, then he's going to have a certain type of performance. Well, through the law of independent assortment, Mendel's, I think it's the second law of heredity. It just shows us that those traits aren't, they're not passed together. They're not related. They have no connection to each other. Okay. Hold on a second. Okay. So when the gametes are produced, which is your sperm and egg, those alleles are different genes and they separate independently. Okay. And when they do, they don't affect each other in any way. So what happens is when you see, how do I say this? When you see a certain color of bird and you're seeing a particular performance ability associated with that, they're not connected exactly. The only time they would seem connected is during gene linkage. So what happens is if they happen to be on the same chromosome and those alleles are really close together, then they can be passed together. And it can seem like they're associated with each other. That doesn't happen very often. It doesn't happen all the time. It's not very often. But the fact that just understand that just because they're a certain color or a certain breed or a certain strain, that they're not going to have a certain performance because they have nothing to do with each other. Anything, Nancy? Because a lot of people, I hear that all the time. Oh, my white-legged birds are better than my yellow-legged birds. Well, and they're talking about the performance. They have no association with each other whatsoever. It doesn't work like that. I keep hitting the wrong button. This is cumbersome. This just shows you. I know. I'm just kidding. But I'm getting kind of frustrated. I don't like to have to work this hard. It takes my mind off of what I want to say. Okay. So this is just gene leakage. This is what I was talking about a second ago. So when they're linked, the alleles are really close together on the same chromosome. When they're not linked is when they're those particular genes, they may be expressed in the bird, but they're not associated with each other because they're on different chromosomes. Or in the third case is where they're so separated from each other, they're not linked. And what happened, and this is really associated with meiosis, because when they go through the crossover event and they swap the genes kind of come together, they split and they swap parts. That crossover event will determine whether those genes are going to be linked or not linked. That's why when you're actually crossing birds and you're bringing in unrelated birds that have different traits, different colors, different performance, different behaviors, whatever, that creates variation that has an effect on how they go through meiosis in the crossover event, and that has an effect on gene linkage, on whether they're expressed together, not expressed together, or whatever.
So, question I have, what do you want? You want gene linked, not linked, or another one that says not linked? Which one do you want to have?
If the traits are important to me, I want them expressed, and the closer they are on the chromosome, the better. If I use birds that are inbred, they're a true family, then I'm not going to get surprises. I'm going to get uniformity. I'm going to get better consistency. I'm going to see improved predictability and repeatability. Okay, if I'm dealing with cross birds, then I'm going to see some birds showing some traits, some birds showing other traits. You see what I'm saying? They're going to be unpredictable. So I'm not going to see the same traits in all. Let's say I'm not going to see the same traits in one bird a lot of times. I'm going to have birds within the family that are going to show different traits. Does that make sense?
Well, let me ask you this then. The one that are linked, the chromosomes that are linked, those are the ones that are going to give you identity, predictability.
You're going to give me uniformity, consistency, predictability, and repeatability.
Okay. The ones that are not linked,
I'm going to give you offspring. Nancy, listen. I'm going to have offspring that are going to show different traits. So if I have a family of bird, if I have two birds I'm breeding together, one has green legs and one has yellow legs, then I'm going to have some offspring with green legs and some offspring with yellow legs. If the one was a gray and another one was a red, I'm going to see some birds that are red, and sex linkage has something to do with that too. I'm going to see some birds with red and some birds with gray, that kind of thing. It's especially when it comes to comb type. If I have two birds, one's a pea comb and one's a straight comb, I'm going to see some birds with pea comb and some birds with straight comb.
Okay.
So none of the offspring are going to be the same.
So therefore, if you are starting a breeding program and you get two black-breasted black reds and you put them together and you're seeing consistency, repeatability, things like that, you know that those genes link. Okay. If you breed, say, a black-breasted red.
No. Okay. So if I see a group of birds, how do I say this? If I see a group of birds that are all showing the same, God, you got me mixed up because you're going down the wrong road. If the genes are linked, the offspring are going to have those genes. They're going to express those genes. Okay. If they're not linked, then they're not either going to get those traits or you're going to see unpredictability within all the offspring.
Gotcha.
Okay. I was going to say something before and I forgot what it was. Damn, got sidetracked. Okay, and this has a lot to do with, God, this is really tough. This is what's throwing me off. I want to be able to switch back and forth on these things, and it's not as easy as I was hoping. Okay, the independent assortment has a lot to do with gene linkage. Okay, it kind of proves each other. It shows that because of the way meiosis works and the way the genes where the crossover event creates variation, because of the unpredictableness of the gametes, the fact I'm getting unique gametes, depends on how they're going to show up on the chromosomes and where they're going to show up on the chromosomes, whether they're leaked or not. That kind of shows you that independent assortment and how it works. So that, like, damn it, where's the damn trait? Hold on a second. Where's the so if I have, this is messing me up, actually. This is breaking my concentration. So if I'm looking at let's say the first one where gene 1 is let's say a leg color versus, and then gene 2 is, let's say, a plumage color, then I know that they're going to be passed together. No, this is not what I want to say. This is messing me up. Because meiosis and gene linkage are highly related, and they have a lot to do with the independent assortment of genes. I didn't present this right. This is not working like I was hoping. I was hoping to lay this out in a way that shows that the more pure the family are, the more predictable they're going to be, where we don't have to worry about independent assortment because the family is so inbred that we're going to see uniform and consistency, predictability, repeatability. But when we're dealing with crossbirds, we're going to see everything under the sun and nothing's going to look alike. Okay. And it has to do with how meiosis works, how gene linkage works, and how they relate to independent assortment of genes, and shows that crossing doesn't refresh the blood, it changes the blood. That makes sense?
Yeah, it changes the genetic makeup.
It doesn't improve the family or refresh the family, it changes the family. That's what meiosis does when you're crossing birds, unrelated birds. That's what happens during gene linkage. And that's why the traits aren't going to work, or the infusion's not going to work like they were hoping as far as refreshing, because of the independent assortment of genes.
So can I ask you one more question on that? It's probably going to trip you up here, but I got to ask it anyway. Because that's what I do, and then you can slap me upside the head when I'm done.
Wait. All I'm going to say is this: I tried to put this together at the last minute, and I can see where I messed myself up. And on the outline, it's not in the order it should be. I didn't create the banners the way they should have been created, and so I'm all over the place.
Don't worry about it. You're making me forget my question.
Oh, good.
So, damn it. So when I'm looking at linked, not linked, not linked, okay. Damn it. Now I forgot the question. Not linked. The one in the middle. That is genes that are going to have a lot of variety. Am I correct?
It just means that they're probably not going to be passed at the same time. They're not going to be passed together. You can't predict them. They're not going to. No, I'm not saying that right. Okay. Think of meiosis again.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I needed was that banner that showed meiosis and gene linkage at the same time. That's what's screwing me up. Okay, because I could explain it better. Because I want them to see this at the same time. When it's going through meiosis in the crossover event and it creates variation, that's going to determine how they're going to line up on the loci. Okay. When it's a pure family that's predictable, I can guarantee with greater success. I can with what's the word for it? I'm going blank on me. I don't want to say guarantee, but with a higher rate of success, those genes are going to be passed together if the family's pure and it's an established family. Now, if I'm dealing with a cross where the birds are unrelated with contrasting characteristics and they go through the crossover event, then chances are that the traits, the the traits that are on the chromosome are going to, when they go through recombination and the gametes are created, because each one of those gametes are going to be different, they're going to show up differently on the chromosome. Chances are they're not going to be linked, and if they are, it's going to be lucky. Okay. I want more uniform, more consistency.
Right.
I want to see more predictability and repeatability in my offspring. The more inbred they are, the less meiosis is going to affect them. I'm going to see they're going to line up better during gene linkage on the chromosome, and I'm going to see the uniformity and consistency that I want to see. Okay. When we're talking about independent assortment of genes, when I have a family and I think someone else is going to improve my family or refresh it, I just made the family unpredictable. And they're not going to express the traits that they were expressing the way they were before. Now, when I'm talking about polygenic traits, this is really important when it comes to the assortment of genes, or the independent assortment of genes, is when I'm talking about form and function traits, then there's no way to say that if my red birds are have better performance than my gray birds, because it doesn't work like that. Mendel's independent assortment of genes proves that. And it's meiosis, and meiosis is the reason for that, because of the way the crossover event, recombination, and it creates variation within the gametes. I know I'm beating this to death. I'm just trying really hard to recover from the way I presented this, because this is not the way I wanted to present it. Because it's one thing to understand selective breeding, but it's another thing to take crossing, infusion, outcrossing, gene flow, and think you're selectively breeding. You're not. Because the only time you're really selectively breeding is when you're trying to create a family and you're selecting the desirable traits and moving those forward, and moving them forward in a way that's progressing the family. Because when you're using gene flow or crossing, you're not progressing anything, you're changing them. They're going to be completely different. Even if you select birds that all share the same traits, both sides have straight comb, single comb, they're both red, they both have green legs. There's a lot of things within the genome that are still different, especially when it comes to the hidden recessives, the polygenic traits, the form and function traits. Those are going to come out in the genome. Now we're talking about the genotype. Those are going to come out in future generations as variation. All the offspring are going to be different, whereas if they were pure, they would have all been uniform and consistent. So the reason I wanted to put this in there, because I wanted to show you that although we're talking about selective breeding, and it only works if you're creating a family through a proper breeding program, selecting birds actually progress a family, gene flow, crossing, infusion, outcrossing is not selective breeding. Now you're changing the family. This one really gets in my craw, and why I want to make such a big deal about it, because I just I heard it, was it yesterday, today even, where someone was saying, I think it was today, where they were saying my Kelso when I cross my Kelso family to my sweater family, that's a good refresh. My Kelso, I can't remember if he said my Kelso or my sweater, but my Kelso really does a good job of refreshing my sweater family. It could have been vice versa. And I was like, wow, this guy really doesn't know what he's talking about, because it doesn't work like that. That's not even selective breeding.
That's just hybrid vigor in the first offspring.
Yeah, it is hybrid vigor. Okay. So I don't know. I'm trying to break that frame of thought. I wish I would have done a better job of it today. I just didn't present them in a good way. So, yeah, I'm hoping people are seeing the relationship between the two, and what works and what doesn't, and why the one that doesn't work, why it doesn't work. Okay, let's wrap it up with this. Let's see what I got here. Okay, this is a big deal in selective breeding, in that to understand that let's say you get birds from another breeder, could be same town, could be from another state. Epigenetics kicks in and it expresses genes you didn't really see before. They were always there. You didn't know they were there. Okay. It doesn't change the birds that you got, but it changes the offspring. And sometimes it's not right away. What you're going to see is it might even be in the third and fourth generation. Okay. And it doesn't show it within all the offspring. It only shows it maybe in one of them here and there, or it may show it in a few of them or whatever. It's not consistent. This isn't like a predictable thing. So the histone, let's see what I got here. Yeah, okay. The histone modifications act like switches. And the DNA methylation works like knobs. So what's happening is the histone modifications can either at times turn some genes on or off, which can change the results you're getting in some of the offspring, which can work in your benefit or work against you. Okay. The DNA methylation works like a knob where you have your dimmer, like you have your switch that turns on and off the light. Then you have those ones that have the knob that actually changes the intensity of the light as you turn it. Mm-hmm. Well, DNA methylation works like that. So what happens is you'll see different intensities, especially mostly in like the form and function traits, like the polygenic traits. You're going to see different intensities in that. So you might see some that have a little higher intensity. You might see some that kind of just stay the same. You might see some that have a lower intensity that aren't that good. Okay, this is why it's also important to hatch as many chicks as possible. Okay, then you have the RNA regulation, which determines whether those changes happen. Okay, so whenever you get new birds from other people or you buy new brood fowl, expect change. I don't care how good they were with that other guy. I don't care how well they looked, how good their conformation was. I don't care how good they performed. Expect to see changes. This has a lot to do with the overall. It's mostly like the form and function traits, the polygenic traits, the monogenic traits like dominant recessive. The genes are the genes. How they match up is determined by whether the parents have them or not, whether both have the same allele or not, whether one's dominant, the other one's recessive. That's just genetics. That's going to keep working the way they always work. But when you're talking about the polygenic traits, the form and function traits, and you're talking about disease resistance, that kind of thing, those can change by the environment. And the way I like to look at it is the what we call the three-legged stool. And epigenetics affects these things, and how you select these things will determine whether the family improves or goes the wrong direction. Okay, so environment has a lot to do with them. It will have a big effect on epigenetics. How you manage them, like the way you pen them, how you take care of them, the medications you use or don't use, supplements you may use. Those all have an effect on the bird. Okay. So anytime you bring birds that are from different environments into yours and you change the way you raise them, how the climate is that they're raised in and how you raise them compared to how they were raised before, that has a big effect on them. Okay. Some of them are going to help. Some of them are going to hurt. Okay. Because they're different birds from different geographical, I always get those mixed up, geographical locations. What's funny about that is it's going to affect the overall flock differently. So let's say you produce a lot of offspring. Well, it's not going to a lot of times affect all of them the same way. It's going to affect some of them differently. You're going to see great improvement through some of them by the way you manage them and feed them and take care of them. Some of them are just going to stay the same, and some are going to actually get worse. And that's where selection comes in. You're going to have to determine which ones to select to move forward. Okay. So when you bring them from their farm to your farm, you're going to see a big difference in how their health, what sicknesses are already hiding, how they react to your environment, Okay. The way you feed them, the supplements you get, that's going to change them. And again, they're all going to be different. The offspring for a while until you fine tune them and get them through the breeding program. Some are going to be good. Some are going to be mediocre, and some are going to be really bad. No matter what kind of nutrition and supplement you give them, you've got to select the ones that are surviving really well under the way you're raising them, the way you're feeding them, your care. Those are the ones that are thriving under those conditions. Those are the ones you're selecting. You're getting rid of the rest. So you're fine tuning them. You're narrowing them down to the best ones. Okay. So the environment's going to change them. How you manage them is going to change them. Their health, whether they're sick or healthy, how you select that is going to change them. And then the way you feed them and whether you feed them supplements. You've got to select the few that are thriving in those environments, because it's not going to fix them all. It's not going to change. They're not all going to be the same, I guess you can say. And then the third leg is that selection that we're talking about. And whenever the histone modifications, the DNA methylation, and the RNA transcription is going to determine which traits are expressed, which is for the most part the genetics of those birds, and what you select generation after generation over time will become the strain. So like I said, you have environment management, you have health and nutrition, genetic inheritance, and selection of traits. If you don't do all three of those really well, you mess up in any one of those, and you're not selecting the right birds along the way, you're never going to get there. They're just never going to improve. You're just going to see, you're not going to see the uniform and consistency. They're not going to be predictable and repeatable. You're always going to see variation. You're always going to see contrasting characteristics. You're always going to see some that are sick and then maybe some that are healthy. How you select the standouts, each generation is going to make the difference. And then eventually, that's why we say you can get birds. I can get birds from, let's say, Tony Seville. Okay. And then we can compare them. 10 years later, they're going to be completely different, because my environment and how I take care of them is going to be different than his. Okay. How I manage the health is going to be different. The way I feed them is going to be different than his. The genetic traits that are expressed and how I select them it may be different, because I'm going to have a different eye. So that's why we say, not only are the birds that you buy from someone else, don't expect them to be, they might be the greatest birds from their farm, but expect them to change. And know that after a number of generations, they're going to be completely different than his. That's another reason why they say, well, first of all, isolation is a big deal. You never want to bring in outside birds and mess up your birds. And they say, okay, well, I won't add anybody else's birds into the family, but what about getting birds from the original breeder? No, because I've changed them. After a number of generations, my birds now are completely different than his. Not to mention, you don't know what he's doing on his farm. You don't know what kind of diseases he's nurturing or fixing or trying to deal with. You don't know if he's all of a sudden like the trait that showed up one day and he started exaggerating and now they're different. So I wouldn't even go to the original breeder to get birds and bring them into mine thinking that I'm going to improve on them or that I need to refresh them because no. If I screwed them up, I screwed them up. But just understand that once I get them on my farm and I selectively breed them and work with them over numerous generations, they are going to be unique from everybody else's birds in many ways, including the person I got the birds from. Epigenetics is a major factor. Understanding how to deal with epigenetics will mean the success or failure of your family. Okay. I could create the best farm in the world, the best environment. I could feed them the best nutrition. Okay. And I could still fail because I didn't know what to select. The genes were being expressed. The traits were showing up, but I didn't know which ones to select. And I didn't know how to select them properly. especially when it came to the polygenic traits. Because if I'm just breeding everything to everything, then I'm still creating the variation, because that's what polygenics is. It's the variation that we're dealing with, the gray matter. We always want to select the highest intensity, but if I'm bringing everything because I don't know what to select, I'm not improving anything. If there was a farm that didn't care about, he didn't improve his environment or management, he didn't care about the nutrition, and he didn't feed him supplements, and he just, the health is a health that he didn't, let's say he didn't cure him, but he did select properly according to his environment, those birds would improve, believe it or not, because he bred the best birds that they produced from the environment he was in, and he did not improve his environment. He did not improve he didn't change his management according to everybody else's. He didn't feed them like the real expensive feed or anything. His birds thrived. The birds that thrived in that environment, as long as he selected the right birds, they improved.
Okay, yeah, but it's not just that. The three-legged stool, each leg depends on the other legs to make the perfect match.
Right.
So,
but selection is what ties it all together. Knowing the traits that are selected at the highest intensity, the ones that stand out in that environment, and you're selecting properly, you can improve that family.
yes, I agree with you, but you still have to have good health and nutrition. You still have to manage your environment. They have to have good living conditions.
You'd be surprised, Nancy.
Okay.
The three-legged stool is important. Okay. Yes, you want the best environment possible. You want the best management. You want the best health and nutrition. But I've seen it happen where it's the selection, it's the genetics that ties it all together. If you're selecting the right birds under that environment, you can improve the family.
Yeah, I completely understand where you're going with that. I don't know if the chat room does.
Yeah, okay, and there's a caveat, and I'm trying to get to there.
Okay.
So, yes, I'm going to improve I didn't change the environment. I didn't change the management. I didn't try really hard to give them the best nutrition. I just fed whatever they had. They did, but because of the way I selected them, they did improve. Now, here's where I was going with it. Now, if I compared the two farms, the one who did make sure the environment was really good, did manage them as best as he could, did make sure that they were selected for the healthiest birds. He did, mitochondrial DNA, all of that. He did feed them a good nutrition, and he selected them properly. If you compare the two farms, obviously the one that did all the work is going to be better. But what I'm trying to say is, even the guy who didn't fix up his farm, okay, he just fed them the cheapest food on the shelf. The birds improved because he knew what to select. But are they the same quality as the birds who use the proper environment, that lived in a really good environment, really practiced good farm management, only bred to the healthy birds, didn't use the medications, and gave them proper nutrition because he knew how to select? They're going to be even better than the other guy. So I just want you to understand that selection and the genetic inheritance and the selection of the traits, the traits that you select that's everything. That's how important that is. The proper selection can make up for a lot of faults. Because let's say you, I don't know if I covered it yet, but let's say you have the best environment in the world. Let's say you're managing them really good. They got really good health. You're giving them the best nutrition. But if you don't know how to select them properly, even though they're showing the genetics, you're not going to get there. So I'm just trying to show you the three areas where epigenetics will either improve them, but not at the speed that you would like, or you go in a really bad direction. You had the best birds in the world, but because you didn't know how to select them properly, you had the best birds in the world, you had the best conditions in the world, but because you didn't select them properly, you went in a completely different direction. You see what I'm saying? The
I
guy
do.
who actually did everything wrong but knew how to select did better than the guy with the greatest environment, greatest feed, but didn't know how to select. He went in the wrong direction. So selection is everything. How you select them and understanding the results from those offspring and the traits that they're expressing and knowing how to select them and match them up properly will make all the difference.
And let me tell you.
Wait. I wanted to do this in a way that shook you up because I wanted to give you three. I hope it was only three scenarios. I wanted to give you three separate scenarios and make you think, because you're going to think, okay, well, he just said environment is everything. He said management is everything. He said if the right nutrition isn't there, they would go in the wrong direction. I mean, those make a difference, but I've seen people do everything wrong, but they knew how to select and they improved the family. And I've seen guys who had everything going their way, but they didn't know how to select, and they destroyed the birds.
I've seen that too.
Okay, so the idea to do it at its optimum is hopefully you have a really good environment. Hopefully you have really good farm management and you do everything you need to do. Hopefully you're selecting the healthiest birds. You're getting away from the medications. Hopefully you're using really good nutrition. It's a complete feed that doesn't need a lot of supplement. Okay, I'm big into that. I don't like having to add a lot of stuff. To me, that's hiding weakness. But understanding the breed, understanding the genetic traits they have, the genetic factors of those traits, I guess you could say, and knowing how to select them properly and mate them properly so you're getting the results you want. That's key. That's epigenetics at its optimum. That's using the three-legged stool at its best.
Gotcha.
I hope that woke people up.
Yeah.
Because I've never explained it that way, but I've seen those different, because I've had people go, well, I didn't worry about this. I didn't worry about that. And my bird still got better. I go, yeah, because you selected them properly. You were able to make up for a lot of faults as far as the way you manage them and how you took care of them and how you fed them, because you knew the bird, you knew how to select them properly. Is he going to improve those birds at the same level and intensity as someone who's doing everything right? No, but he's going to improve it. He's going to do a hell of a lot better than the guy who's doing everything right, but he doesn't know how to select the birds. All that guy did was waste a lot of money.
Yep.
Okay. So let me hold on a second, because I think I get there. Oh, let me see if I can cover this real quick. Okay, I think this is important. Okay, so when we look at the different things that affect our bird, we talked about Mendelian type traits, your dominant recessive. Okay, we talked about quantitative traits, which is your polygenic traits. As you can see, as the further we go out, the more important they are. Mendelian type traits, sex-linked traits, very, very minor when you think of the overall scheme of things. It's select them or cull them for the most part. Quantitative traits, polygenic traits, those are more complex. But if you understand how to select them for the highest intensity over many generations, you can really improve the family. And it mostly has to do with the form and function traits. But the environment affects everything. It's the biggest factor. It really is. That's what I liked about this this chart. It shows the impact that environment has on your birds, because it really changes the birds. It expresses things you didn't see before, and it's all determined by how you select.
Okay, so can I say something here?
Yeah.
You're saying, how important the environment is. So my question to you is, if somebody is going to go out and buy their brood fowl, is that something that they should consider, is try to find something in your own community that has a similar environment to what you have?
I don't want to say that. All I'm going to say is I would find birds. I'd find breeders that are actually good breeders. And it's hard to find because there's a lot of people that are saying that they're authorities or acting like authorities. They have big farms selling birds. And I look at pictures and videos of their farm and birds, and I'm sorry, but I'm not impressed. I don't think they're qualified to be an authority in anything. That's just my opinion. Okay. So I would find a really good breeder that has really good birds. And I would get the best birds I can. I actually would try not to get them mailed to me if possible. I would select them myself. I would educate myself, go on their farm with some knowledge and education so that I'm selecting the birds that I think represent what I'm trying to do, making sure that I'm selecting a cock and hen that not only have the right traits, but match each other really well, that are healthy. Okay. Then I can move forward with them. So yeah, that's what I would say. I wouldn't say you have to get them like locally. Just know, you just got to know what to select. I do believe that you can get good and bad birds on a good farm. And I think you can get good and bad birds on a bad farm, peddler's farm. Just got to know what you're looking for.
Yeah, but my point is, if you're from Southern California and you track up to Alaska because you just are really in love with this brood fowl that you want to get, and you're bringing them back to Southern California where it's mostly sunny and 90 degrees most of the year, compared to Alaska where it's 60 degrees and below, most of the years, that bird's going to change because of its environment.
I would expect no matter what bird you bring in your yard, they're going to change one way or the other.
Okay.
I wouldn't worry about it. I wouldn't get too caught up in that.
Okay.
You just don't know. You also don't know enough. Let's say you buy one from across town. Ask yourself, really, what do you really know about that person and his birds? Are they really true bred? Are they really a real family? How often does he get birds from other people and bring them into his? Who knows? Yeah. Just try to find the best breeder you can that has really good birds. Go select them. Go there with some knowledge. Select the best birds you can that are healthy, that represent their breed, and use a proper breeding program and be committed to that, to creating a strain, a true strain. So, but that was the main thing I wanted to, that's why I put it in epigenetics for the most part, because I really wanted to show the importance of selection. The impact that selection has on success or failure of your strain. Okay. That you could start with the best birds and screw them up if you're not knowing what you're doing. You can get some mediocre birds and improve them. I did it. My Maximus line, everybody goes crazy over. I wasn't starting with great birds. In fact, where are they at? Huh.
You may have taken them off.
The top ones. That's what I start with. Those are original seed fowl that I got from Colonel Givens over 30 years ago. They were not great birds. Now, some people are going, wow, they look good to me. Well, then we need to work on your work on your selection and your knowledge of the breed. Because that hen, the conformation type is really bad. Her carriage is off. The cock overall conformation if I was explaining to you without you seeing it, you'd say, wow, that sounds pretty good. But his overall type isn't that great. He doesn't really represent the breed like he should. I never added not one drop of outside blood in these guys in the 30 years or over 30 years I've had them. And the ones on the bottom is what they look like today. Through selection, using the proper breeding program, you can improve them. I did not start with the best birds. But with a lot of help from Tony and some of my other mentors who helped me understand genetics, I was able to improve them and create and use the founders program to make them a true family and a very uniform, consistent, a very predictable and repeatable family. Which, ask Nancy, I don't have to put a lot of effort into it these days.
No, not anymore. No. I want to pull this up because this is somebody who is educated in the birds. You wouldn't believe there are a lot of people auctioning birds. I see a lot of defects. And the reason why I pulled up this comment is because it makes me feel happy inside that this guy knows what defects to look for and seize them. Yeah.
Well, ask yourself, why are they auctioning them off in the first place?
Yeah.
Because they can't get top dollar for them, and they're just trying to get rid of them. And a few bucks is better than nothing.
Yeah.
You know, it helps pay the feed, I guess. Instead of culling those birds like he should, he just wants a few bucks. And that's getting in the hands of people who don't know better a lot of times.
Yeah.
People who think those are overall pretty good birds that they can work with or do something with. And it's not until years later they realize, or until they meet the right person that can explain to them, they realize that the birds they have weren't really good birds. You know. So I would start with the best birds you can, for sure. And I'm not going to say that you need to spend a lot of money. Exactly. I guess the term "you get what you pay for" is true, but I would make sure that the birds you're buying have what you want them to have, that they do represent their breed, don't have any noticeable defects, represent their breed, and they're healthy. That's the biggest thing.
Okay, now I do have 2 questions starred.
Okay.
The second one we have talked about in the public area quite a few times before. I don't recognize these people, so I don't know if you want to. No, not that one. It's the second one, but that one's an easy one to answer.
What happened when inbred pullet? What's the difference between a pullet and a hen? A pullet's under a year old, a hen's a year or older.
I think what he's trying to say is it okay to inbreed a pullet that, or is it best to wait till she's a hen?
The only time I would breed a pullet for anything is as a test mating to see what I get, see if she's worth keeping.
Right. So inbreeding at that point is not happening, right?
Huh?
Inbreeding a pullet is not happening. You're waiting until
only as a test.
Only as a test.
Only as a test. What does he say, Nancy? Or read it to me. Everything's too small.
Okay.
I need it to be. My screen's really small.
Did you say sometime back that the original pair or trio you purchased, you raise as many as you can select from, and never breed the originals again, even if you paid like a lot of money for that?
Okay.
Yeah.
The way I would look at your Adam and Eve or your seed fowl is they have one job, is to get the strain going.
Yeah.
Okay. Once you get into the program and you've got a number of generations behind you, especially once you get past the cleanup process, when you breed those original birds back into the family, you just added all those genes that you worked out of them, all those genes that you were culling and fixing and eliminating along the way. Okay. All the defects that would show up every now and then, now you're going to see those again. All the deleterious genes you thought you weeded out, those are starting to show up again. All the progressive white, I guess you could say, that you thought you got past, it's starting to show up again. So the original pair have one job, and that is to get the family going. Now, we do have a stage 2 of the Founders Program, which would give you a reason to use them a little longer. But still, after that, you're not using them again. Now, if you want to try, if they're really good birds and you want to play around with them after, on the side, you could do that. But as far as the family's concerned, they have one job, and that's to get the family going. I know that's a lot of money, and it's like, wow, why would I spend that much money for Adam and Eve that I'm only going to use once or twice? Yeah, that's a good question.
That is a very good question.
Because a lot of times we're going to talk about it. There's a breeding program. It's on my list of breeding programs to cover. I'm going to cover it on the front end. It's because it's not one I want my breeders to use. I want them to use the Founders Program. It's called the trio method. It's a very popular method. It's like taking, let's say you get a trio. It could be a family. It could be from a pure family, like a cock and 2 hens, like whatever. And I'll just give you a layout of it real quick, but it's a full-on program I want to do that will really explain it and go deeper. So I breed the cock to 2 hens. I kind of line breed those 2 hens. So I get to a certain point, and then I breed them to each other. Okay, I breed the offspring from this one to the offspring to this one. And that's a really popular one. But it does not progress the family like you think. It doesn't actually even clean them up. And let's put it this way, if you're taking a trio or a pair that you got from someone and you put them and you just put them immediately into a line breeding program without cleaning them up, then all you're doing is perpetuating all the faults that are still in them. If you're seeing contrasting characteristics as you're going from generation to generation, you didn't clean them up. You're just perpetuating faults. You're not really even creating a family. You're not improving them in any way whatsoever. That's why cleanup process is so important. That's why line breeding by itself is insufficient. There's some things you have to do before you line breed, and there's some things you need to do after you line breed. Okay, and when you're using the trio method, it's kind of an abbreviated form of line breeding, but done very improperly. Without the cleanup process, and my members will know what I'm talking about. You do the cleanup process, you do the transition stage, and then you put them through a foundation stage. And my members know exactly what I'm talking about. That's what you want to do. The trio method gets you nowhere. So I'll be doing like I did. What did we do? In and inbreeding. I had no problem doing that on the front end. I don't want my members doing that, but I wanted to show the ins and out of that. The 5/8, 3/8, we did that in the front. The trio method's another one I'm going to do on the front because I think there's more problems with that method than benefits. Anything else?
Right. No, that's it.
Okay. So I don't know. I need to do better at setting up outlines earlier because these last minute.
No complaints.
Okay.
You did good.
No, it's not the way I wanted to do it.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Is that a wrap?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay. So, just so that you know, we had discussed it today and decided that 6 o'clock was a better fit for you all. It seemed to be that everybody had on the West Coast had able to have time to get home and settled after work and pop on at 6. And, 9 o'clock on a Friday night isn't too bad for the East Coast peoples. So we're going to go back to our original 6 o'clock starting time for our episodes.
Yeah, I think it was better for me too. It just seemed too early to do 5 o'clock. I wasn't ready today.
Well, alrighty then.
Is that it?
That's it. I hope you all have a great weekend. Those of you in Michigan in the upper states, hang in there. I know the air quality is not so great right now, so we're thinking of you.
Yeah, I want to thank you guys for joining us. I hope you learned something from this. And I'm sorry, Nancy. I just didn't like the way this one came out.
It's okay.
Yeah. Okay. So say bye. We'll see you guys later.
Okay. Bye.